All right, good morning to our audience. Welcome to KZN's first virtual session for 2022. We're excited to have you with us today. We've got a really exciting guest speaker. My name is Elaine Kruger. I'm the KZN chairperson for the ASDSA, and I am going to give you a little bit of an intro on who Petra Rees is. Right, so Petra Rees is a social entrepreneur who has commercialized a few African ventures already. I'm sure from her perspective, they were adventures. Her award-winning tech business provides educational content one can 3D print at school straight off its proprietary content management platform. Petra is currently scaling her tech business called the Corp to provide 3D printing content and small batch manufacturing capabilities to industries such as mines, manufacturers, and healthcare practitioners to solve for supply chain constraints and hyper-local innovation. Petra has been recently recognized as a winner of the Inspiring 50. She is an executive board member of the Institute of Inventors and Innovators South Africa, and co-ambassador of the Women in 3D Printing in Johannesburg. Petra holds, let me just go back to where that was. She holds a BSc in Honours in Law and Management, as well as a Master of Business Administration. And then just some of her specialities. She has vast experience in growing business opportunities into great sustainable ventures. She specializes in enterprise development, supply chain optimization, customer retention and acquisition, as well as marketing. Petra also speaks English, German, French, and Czech fluently. So we have a super amazing, dynamic individual who's going to share with us today. I have the privilege of engaging with Petra on a number of occasions, and every conversation has been incredibly inspiring. So Petra, I'm going to hand over to you now to share with us on how linking skills development to the fourth industrial revolution can inspire and encourage us.
Thank you so much, Elaine. Can you hear me well?
Yes, I can.
Perfect. Thank you so much for the warm introduction. It makes me old at the same time. You went through it very diligently, but it's so exciting to always hear like all these things. I always get excited about yes and this and that, and always, as you said correctly, it's those ventures were adventures, and I'm really excited to share some of the experiences that we learn actually in this presentation, because that's essentially why I'm here as well, and how we can link those to skills development to make it obviously more as efficient in an organization as possible. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone in KZN. We have very cold weather up in here in Joburg, so I'm always very jealous if I speak to anyone from KZN, especially from now onwards for the next 6 months. So next time I will be doing hopefully something in person during this time of the year. So again, thanks again, and I will be sharing a few slides with you if I may. I think we will take it from there into discussion. If anybody has any questions, please obviously put it down in the chat, or just remember, hold your thoughts, and then let's discuss them, because there's a lot of food for thought, and I would love to have your input so that we can actually make a better product going forward for anyone, and we can essentially grow jobs in this country sustainably. So essentially, that's what we are also trying to do, right? To create jobs of tomorrow, today. And that's essentially what that 4IR is about. It's all about this kind of future that we are very unsure of, and it's sometimes very drops those bombs like COVID, and now we need to, even what's going on in Ukraine, we now need to very much quickly adapt, find new ways how to deal with disrupted supply chains, not being able to have access to the right skills, maybe at the right time, resources, and so forth. So that's essentially what we're trying to solve. All these problems that we're having today, COVID really opened a big can of worms for all of us, and see how we can resolve this. So I would like to open actually this discussion with one of my favorite quotes of all times from Bill Gates, that most people overestimate what they can do in 1 year and underestimate what they can do in 10 years. And I think it's so profound on so many levels, because even when we talk in organizations that you're part of, we're dealing with 6 months budget, yearly budgets, and that's kind of, and 5-year visions. But we kind of don't really get to 10-year planning as much. And we don't really go back necessarily 10 years at every meeting and say, hey, how has it been 10 years ago? Apart from the sentimental, jokes about, Nokia and remember those days when we actually didn't have WhatsApps and how did we do this? But let's face that, really 10 years ago, where we were and where we are today, it's a huge steps that we made. And a lot of things can be achieved in those 10 years that we would never even fathom 10 years ago. And I think that's what we need to look at when we're talking about skills, is that, we see these programs that are out there or that we put our staff onto. And we always say, oh, yeah, but that was great, but will it really make any difference? Will it make really any difference if I send my staff on a 6-month coding class or improve Java coding, or if those young people are going to do more robotics classes? Will it really make any difference? And we don't see necessarily any difference, right? In like year, 2 years, it's more like, yeah, but we're still not there and it's not good enough. And we can't see the light at the end of the tunnel sometimes. But if you look at 10 years, what can we achieve? It's huge. So just bear that in mind. Don't get despondent about, 4IR and it may not be working for you right now. And that kind of tearing of hair that you may be having around that. But you need to keep going. You need to get more bolder than you've ever been. Because this is the time to get bold. There is in a 10 years from now, I think we need to reinvent the word bold, because I'm terrified to even think that what is the accelerated word of bold. So just don't get despondent. And especially when you see obviously stats like that, when you look at unemployment rate over 40%, youth over 74%, and how do we try to get these people into jobs that are not there? And again, we get very despondent when we look at these statistics and we say, well, how can we, there's this chasm that is in front of us, and we kind of thinking about, now I have to go into the chasm and come up. Well, we can't do that. I think people realize we can't do that. We have to leapfrog that chasm. And especially when you look at the stats that goes with it, that says that in 15 years, AI will replace about 40 to 50% of jobs. Now that comes from KwaZulu. I don't know if anybody of you is familiar with him. He's an ex-Google president of China. He comes from Google America. But essentially, please, if those of you who haven't read this book, AI Superpowers, do yourself a favor, please read it. One of the best books ever written on kind of even future of jobs and etc. and what those likes of AIs and automation is going to do to those jobs. And they really do look at things like dexterity versus repetition, and repetition versus strategy. If we look at those jobs like telemarketers and warehouse workers and customer support agents and staff, clerks, tellers, drivers, these jobs will be replaced by AI to a large degree. And now if you think about that's what's going to happen now, primarily in the developed world, we have to think about this as well when we're leapfrogging going forward. So we can't just leapfrog just like that. We need to really start from scratch. We don't have those jobs that America and Europe and that can offer, right? We don't have it right now. So we need to actually create them, and we need to create jobs that don't exist yet. So it's a huge task. But at the same time, it's a blessing as well, because we don't have the baggage that we need to carry with us, like the US and Europe and etc., where those jobs exist, and they need to kind of make them better and optimize them. We can throw away all the bad things, bad processes that goes with it, and we can really kind of reimagine how that could actually work. How can we solve those problems better? So you remember a good example of this is our banking system, mobile operators, mobile networks. I mean, we pioneered the best of the best in Africa before the world was still hanging on to landlines and trying to figure out how they should do cross-border payments, because we had that problems and we solved it using technology completely differently. So now we have to do the same thing. And we have to look at not to create jobs for the sake of creating jobs, so that we have more telemarketers and we have more warehouse workers, so that those people will then possibly go out of a job. But how can we rather reskill these jobs already and reimagine what those jobs can do in the next 5 to 10 years? And that's possible, obviously, through digital skills. And now when I say digital skills, it doesn't necessarily mean just coding. A lot of times, and especially in the education space where we come from, it's people look at coding. How can I get more staff into coding programs, or how can I get more learners coming out from coding backgrounds and etc. It's not just about that, right? It's about understanding kind of the different digital skills in the clouds, like, for example, your IoT, your AI, your VR, your AR, and etc. But where I'm passionate about, especially in the African environment, I'm passionate about 3D printing. And the reason for it is that anything that is in the cloud, that is kind of just in our minds, can become reality. You can actually make it real. And that's where I see a huge potential in across Africa, especially in South Africa, is in that space of 3D printing. Let me just quickly take you on a 3D printing journey so that you can appreciate it and get excited about it as well. Is that where it started in the 80s? It's not a new technology. Where it really took huge leaps forward was over the last decade, when we start talking about 3D printing aircraft parts, but also whole aircraft, cars, houses. That man here is holding a wrench. That man is an astronaut on the NASA's International Space Station. They 3D printed that wrench in 2014. That's almost 10 years ago that they actually were able to 3D print parts in space. Now that's already quite a long time ago. So we already moved quite a bit, so that now we actually 3D printing rockets to go to Mars, so that we can 3D print in rockets on Mars to go back up to Earth. So it's super exciting space. The people often ask about how far are we from 3D printing heart as a human organ that can be transplanted. And we are about 15 years from then, but we already are able to do smaller, like more simple organs, like a bladder. And obviously, as the organs get more sophisticated, the technology obviously needs to catch up and to make sure that we can do a heart, for example. But remember, the projections are that there will be a 3D printer in every household by 2030. Obviously, we're talking about specific LSMs, maybe in the developed world. But if you look at that, those probabilities are very real. They are already getting, especially COVID again, accelerated that. And then obviously, you know, by 2050, we'll be making houses on Mars by using 3D printers. But why is this technology essentially growing so much and it's so prevalent? It's a technology that can reach about $2 trillion by 2030. At the moment, it's sitting about $100 billion. Now, if you think about that, Africa is 2% of the global GDP. You know, you start talking about $400 billion by 2030, and I think it's worth chasing. It's big numbers. And the drivers behind it, it's mainly the technology, like the printers that are obviously coming up, software, AI, materials, but also the demand drivers. Now, we all experienced COVID and disruption of supply chain. So being able to get to market with products quickly, hyper customize the product, small batch manufacturing, which is a huge opportunity for localization of manufacturing in Africa, organic manufacturing, superior performance products. Again, make it so that actually we're using 3D printing more and more, believe it or not. Now, let me take you a little bit into a home turf in terms of South Africa and what, for example, we've achieved over the last 2-3 years in the space. Typically, we have identified over 15% of items in companies that can be 3D printed or injection molded. More effectively, essentially, you can make an end user product than getting it from overseas. Now, on top of it, as you know, oil prices are rising. We all like holding our breath, what's going to happen next, with rationing being kind of thrown our way, and etc. So scary times. And again, you know, why do we need to be hanging our breath onto, you know, our products are now getting more expensive because we're importing them, for example, from China or Europe or anywhere else in the world. Also, we're transporting them from Durban to Johannesburg, and etc. Why are we not making products right there where we actually work? So all these costs can be in addition minimized, plus the CO2 emission. I don't even need to go into that, right? The margins were up to 90% actually high on specific products. I'll show you just in my hand one product of that kind. This is a part of a Mercedes that is not in the country at the moment. And when it is, it's about 600 Rand to get, between 500 to 600, depending obviously where you get it. And it's not there. It's not in the country. It will be here in about 3 months, potentially. This is the 3D printed part, perfect replica of it. And that was done in 10 hours. And it was essentially the price on those, you're talking about the material was 50 Rand versus 600 Rand to buy. So you can start appreciate those kind of margins that are possible. And by the way, it's here. It's actually this part is already built into the vehicle right here. Staff that was be able to train over a very short period of time, which is again a big advantage to, for example, 3D printing in comparison to coding, which takes a little bit longer to master. So 3D printing, we achieved amazing results within 3 months. People were able to understand the products, what materials they need to use, how to operate machines, and how to actually 3D model to start customizing it. And, you know, within a few years, you can get amazing reverse engineering skills into your company that can actually achieve greater savings. New revenues through new products, customers to deliver to customers, and other benefits include unit cost savings, increased service delivery due to rapid prototyping, new customers identified thanks to new products, and etc. Now, what was also important is the production downtime that obviously we can minimize. Because you're from KZN, I always, it's much easier to say, you all, I'm sure, know Maersk shipping lines. So now there is a 3D printer on every Maersk ship. And the reason for it is exactly that. If a part breaks, the ship keeps on going because they can actually manufacture 3D print that part right there on the sea. And when they get to shore, the part can be replaced if it needs to be replaced by an original OEM part, or you can keep on going, right? So that's kind of the benefits that already big operators are using. And that's really a great example of how you can reduce a production downtime effectively. This is another lovely case studies in terms of healthcare, where actually this kind of hand support, very unique. It's been designed by one of our partners in Natal, and they achieved already a great kind of upside to it from the local clientele perspective, what they can actually provide at a much cheaper rate, more effectively, right there, customized to a client's need. So even in, especially when you're talking about underserviced communities, it's a big opportunity. Local supply chains improvement. I already mentioned that that disruption in terms of supply chain, how that can be minimized through 3D printing. Local innovation. So I'm sure that a lot of you've seen this kind of a tractor on our roads before. And it would be a good question. What do you think was 3D printed on this tractor? It was actually the housing in the engine. So that part is no longer available on any scrapyard. So now you can actually push the lifetime of a machine even further because of 3D printed parts, believe it or not. Reimagining healthcare, that's a big one. I've already touched on that, and how obviously hand supports. This kind of upper arm prosthetic was printed in 22 hours. It's about 200 Rand cost to print, and you know, it's very much promoted again in those kind of underserviced communities, because their kids grow out of them very quickly, and it's affordable. And housing, 3D printing, construction, finally, we're starting to hear more and more about this. There was another interview on Power FM actually last week that I was part of. So good to know that government is coming finally kind of to that point where they are going to roll it out to test it. There's a lot of 3D printing in housing already happening in East Africa, and at the moment you can print actually 2 houses in a day. And a 65 square meter house is about $9,500. So it's about 150,000 Rand, just so that you know, I get asked these questions sometimes. And also where 3D printing comes in is that you can now start making products that you were not able to do without 3D printing. So if you look at, this is the original way how things were done before, and this is actually the 3D printed part designed optimally to fit the purpose. And you can see look at these little thin parts, like the structure and the support, how it's actually worked out. It's unbelievable. So you can actually do much better structures. You can actually now with 3D modeling, you can also make them more optimal, cost effective, and so forth. But now, what does it mean to you in your organization today? When you're talking about 3D printing, and the reason I did speak about 3D printing, because I don't feel being necessarily an expert on robotics and AR and VR, but I feel that I can obviously give a lot of input on 3D printing and what benefits we've seen implementing a technology like this in your organization. But essentially, if you look at your own organization and you say, where do I start today? What technology, what shall I do? How do I choose one over the other? I would love this. I love this for IR, but where do I start? How do I take my telemarketer to make sure that they obviously have an improvement in terms of their jobs, but also that they are riding the 4IR wave and they become an essential part in our organization when we need to innovate and bring them into the next version of your business. And also mind you that they need to help you to transform your business when you need to get transformed. So, often in the past, it's the classic, situation, and I've been there before, when we said, okay, so our staff need to go on that BCom degree, Westman-Kosa, or you study UNISA, another a business degree, or PDM degree. And it's amazing, don't take me wrong, but that's not the answer to it. And that's why we're here today. And that's why you're asking, I'm sure, say, okay, so how do we do this? So I'm not saying throw away your BCom degrees and PDMs, but rather think about it differently. Is that how can I, for example, take my marketing person, equip them with a 3D printer, send them on a short course in 3D modeling, and now they can actually be making customized products as gifts to our staff or to our customers. How can they improve our customer experience by using this technology? How do I take our telemarketer and put them also on a customer analytics course where they start understanding analytics and customer satisfaction processes and etc., and understanding how to analyze data? How do I take our bookkeeper and actually send them on a robotics process automation course? Now everybody will be probably a little bit shocked, a little bit surprised when you throw those courses at them, but they will be able to come back with a new way of thinking, because that's the problem. Is the famous Einstein saying that we cannot solve future's problem by our old way of thinking, doing what we did in the past. So we need to, again, rethink it. And it's not about you, HR managers and practitioners and etc. It's really about your staff. How do you allow them to start thinking innovatively? And by using those kind of new way of thinking courses and technology courses to bring in that innovation into your company. So how, for example, if your bookkeeper now is then in addition to your robotics process automation course, how can they identify processes that could be automated within their realm of doing? Or how can you throw a simple budget of 10,000 Rand on at your warehouse team to say, you know, optimize this kind of process line the best that you can, get your sensors, your IoT devices, and go. And you'll be surprised what they come back with. I mean, we've been surprised what people come back with, especially young people. And that's kind of where I get very passionate about, obviously, upskilling youth, because digital skills is one of those skills that have no historical kind of link to it. You know, like math and English and geography and, you know, history and etc. It all depends on those gray beards, elderly people, because they know the best. They've been through it. But digital skills is one of those that actually we don't want the older people to give us advice on that, please. We really need to allow those young people to experiment, to be able to start, small, but be able to and be allowed to be able to experiment with smaller budgets. But every successful company that we even been to, they allow that culture of innovation, obviously, and they allow for these opportunities to happen. Question is, sometimes do they get killed eventually? But that's a different story for another day. But the importance is, let's get started. Let's make sure that we allow these people in our organization to start mapping out these processes and adding technology. And you can really start small. You will be, as I said, you'll be surprised what you can do with a 10,000 budget, for example, in a warehouse, to start looking at IoT devices and sensors, how those can actually optimize your process. That you can actually look at your phone in the morning instead of rushing at 6 o'clock to your workplace, to your factory, that actually you can see it from your phone. And so that's kind of where we thinking around, our thinking is in terms of where you start and how you need to bring it in. Or you can start that. We just put there the customer journey. If you start with your customer journey, it's a brilliant start to actually work out what kind of 4IR skills you might need to equip your employees being in that customer journey department. We all experience an Uber app by saying, okay, well, there's my car. I ordered the car with a click. It's coming. I can see where it is. I hop on the car. I see where I'm going, right? Same thing about the parcel now. That's what the customer experience is today. Now think about your product or your service. How does your customer experience that? You're knowing that Uber does this. So I mean, we need to start looking at those kind of components and allow our people internally to be able to help us with that. Now, this is a beautiful, a short little clip. It's a video clip by Jeff Bezos. And the reason why I want you to listen to it, it's very short, is that he obviously is I think one of the idols when it comes to modernization and an epitome of 4IR company, right? But I want you to hear him about what happened in that fact in his space when they started.
We had no real organization in our distribution centers at all. In fact, we didn't. We were packing on our hands and knees on a hard concrete floor, and I remember, just to show you how stupid I can be. My only defense is that it was late, but we were packing these things. Everybody in the company, and I had this brainstorm. And as I said to the person next to me, this packing is killing me. My back hurts. This is killing my knees on this hard cement floor. And the person said, yeah, I know what you mean. And I said, no, what we need, this is my brilliant insight, we need knee pads. I was very serious. And this person looked at me like I was the stupidest person they'd ever seen. They're like, I'm working for this person. This is great. And said, what we need is packing tables.
So
we had no real organization.
Sorry. So there you have it, from Jeff Bezos himself, how he obviously got that wrong, but how he allowed people internally to come up with ideas. And now look at his warehouse. So look at what Amazon has created, how they're basically using robots to move shelves to the packers optimally, so that essentially there is no one going in the warehouse and picking those items, but they are being brought to the packers. And I'm going to just move it to that section so that you can actually see how it's then being done in the packing line. So then it arrives at the packing line, where they're obviously choosing what it is that needs to go into the different packages. And moving on. So it was again a good example of, firstly, don't be scared to get the people, and those were younger people, to come up with the ideas, come up with the possible solutions, equip them with the right way of thinking. And I think that's the point, is that the right way of thinking is that to have lots of ideas. It's that kind of culture of innovation, where the best way to have a good idea is to have lots of them, as per this Nobel Prize winning chemist, Pauling. It's a really kind of very simple way of how to say, how do you want to actually have the best idea, is to have lots of them. And kind of just to leave you with is that if you want to do it with 110% conviction, you have to do it a lot. So face the discomfort of identifying problems with existing ideas, immerse yourself, think in the shower, let other people say, think in the shower, where do you think we can actually go together? What courses would you choose to actually get to better optimize these processes? Let them work with you. Innovative thinking requires practice. So just like for every new skill you want to truly master, and it might not be just, and that goes back to the service providers and educators. Let them give you some of the best solution. Let them come back to you and say, you know what, I think that these kind of, in addition, for example, these kind of short courses can do additional tricks for your organization. Push on them, because they need to change. They can't be just coming back with the same way of thinking that they did 2 years ago. So, go and demand, demand change, because we need it. And that's me. So please now ask questions. I'm really excited to jump on those and start having debates with you, and hopefully we can come up with great solutions.
Petra, I again feel completely inspired, because you've taken a completely different approach, and I think it's fantastic. Thank you so much. What I did want to add in is, with a lot of us being skills development practitioners, providers, and involved in some way in the skills development landscape, I wanted to just let you know that the 3D printing module learning content that Petra has already been accredited by Mercita. That I'm correct in saying that, Petra, is that right?
Thank you so much, Elaine. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I know that is something that is highly, very, very critical. And what we've done is we've partnered with Petra to build that 3D printing module into a learnership. It definitely can be offered as a standalone, so that that's not a problem at all. But if you're looking at moving towards the development of employees or even unemployed individuals into this space, if Mercita has already approved it, I think we're well on our way to seeing the value of that sort of development in the immediate future.
Yeah, 100%, Elaine, and thank you so much mentioning it. I think that exactly that's the point. It's about how do we really provide the best opportunities for our staff, right? Is that, so if they are, for example, already doing, let's say, a Six Sigma course, which is obviously hugely important, is that how do we then on top of that bundle on those kind of shorter courses, like a 3D printing, like a robotics automation, like IoT and etc. So those kind of things need to be hand in hand. It's not just about let's send somebody on a Six Sigma course. That's not going to solve your long-term problems.
Absolutely. I'd like to open up the floor to some questions. If you have, I think you do have the ability to unmute. Alternatively, you can put something into the chat box.
Hi, Elaine, it's Angelique. I have unmuted everybody. You will be able to unmute yourself if you want to ask a question, but please can I ask that you use the reaction button on the bottom of your screen, just to put your hand up so that we don't overwhelm the speaker if you have multiple questions. Thanks.
Super, thank you so much. Right, do we have any questions from anybody in the audience, or any feedback, any comments?
Don't be shy. You can absolutely ask any questions around that. I've also been quite quick on certain segments. So please shout if you want any clarity, even.
Or to revisit.
Want to also share from experience what worked for you. I think that would be a good platform as well, as a combination, as a way of where you actually brought successfully those kind of 4 IR skills into your organization. I think that would be hugely beneficial. Thank you.
Absolutely. I think along with something like this, there's a lot of change management that needs to come into play, especially with regards to mindset. Because a lot of the South Africans would have a look at something like this and think, oh my goodness, my job, I'm going to be completely dispensable. And I think that's a part of the change management that needs to be applied 100%, because we want to shift their mindsets, and instead of making individuals feel as if they're replaceable, rather draw them into the entire process. Kyla, you've got a question?
Thanks. Yeah, good morning, everyone. Petra, it's so exciting to hear about this, and I've really been quite inspired by your talk this morning, so thanks for that. Do you want me to put my video on? Sorry, I just realized I'm talking to a blank screen. Or is it fine? No?
No, you can leave it off. That's not a problem at all.
Okay, great, thanks. All right. Yeah, so my question, Petra, is really around, I work for quite a big corporate organization, call center, in the health sector, more medical aid benefits and healthcare solutions from that perspective. And definitely one of the challenges that I would love to hear how you have overcome is with regards to how do we transition leadership to actually want to embrace this, rather than wanting to stay in traditional classroom-based learning, and if you're not there with a facilitator, then you're not actually learning. And how can you almost like give that trust over to employees to come up with ideas and then test them out, fail, learn from your mistakes, and test it out again until you get to that point of success. What have been some of your experiences where you've had to address the leadership, because the employee mindset is there, they want to contribute, they want to innovate, but they actually aren't given an environment where they can test it out and flourish and thrive and actually build things, because of the leadership saying, no, but that's not how things are done. We haven't done it that way before. So I'd really love to hear your perspective on addressing leadership and how to bring this forward from the skills space to say, we want to do things differently. We want to introduce new and innovative ways of doing things, but the leadership are just saying, I don't know if it's a fear-based approach or a lack of trust. We still aren't quite sure what the root cause is, but really, that aspect, how do we address that? What has been your experience?
Kyla, thank you so much. I think that probably a lot of people can identify exactly with what you said, because that's essentially kind of the start to the process. Is you might have actually amazing team who is saying and screaming, we're saying, please give us just something more exciting to do. and they would love to do it because, and they would love to even do it after hours. They don't need to be paid for it. And, they would love to kind of have that opportunity, but, the processes are not there. So it's basically, it's that kind of continuous, kind of communication issues, right, with the top and the bottom, and making sure that the plans that your management team has matches. And that's always the issue, is that, management team has that 1 year budget that they need to make, and the forecast that they need to reach, and the share price that they need to make sure that they deliver essentially at the end of the financial year. And then it's, then the 2 years, and that's kind of where a lot of planning stays within that time period. So that's why, everything else, it's nice, but, it's not essential, because now we need to deliver. I mean, we need to hit those numbers, and that's kind of where it needs to be. So exactly to that. And, from experience, firstly, there is always a bit of saying there, it's like a revolution always starts as well in the smaller kind of doses. So it needs to be a two-pronged approach, obviously. You will be probably familiar with the philosophy and the book Multipliers. So you seem like that multiplier person, Kyla, that allows for that in your organization. But maybe not everybody on the top is necessarily talking that same language as you are. And, then for them, what really kind of works well from experience is they actually send them on courses where they actually start changing that, having that innovative mindset, send them on conferences like the Singularity Universities, and they also, Singularity has locally, they offer a lot of executive programs that your executives can go to, and it just like opens their mind to like, no, we really have to do this now. There are organizations, for example, like New Mela. They are actually from KZN. Wendy Mahoney, she's amazing in terms of what they do around innovation and creating innovative cultures, and working with executives to bring in the right type of processes, and almost like your KPI, aligning them to the KPIs and making sure that you have the right culture, essentially. So, you need to a little bit fight their your top, obviously your management, etc., with the tools that they are used to, if I put it this way, that kind of from experience work quite well in other organizations where they were actually kind of given the right tools and on the right courses, so they can actually really understand what it means and just open their minds. The moment you open their minds, then they actually allow a lot of things to happen. But if nothing, if they don't know what they don't know, it's just you fighting, and it's a fight that will never be won.
Absolutely. And if I can just add to that too, in my experience, it has been about putting together the entire plan, becoming somewhat of a subject matter expert yourself in, let's say, for example, you're eager to run with a 3D printing in your organization. Become a subject matter expert, put the plan together, develop the return on investment plan for the people who make the financial decisions. Explain to them how this is going to be integrated into the business. The more they know, the more of an informed decision they're going to be able to make. Yeah, absolutely. Norzy, you've got a question.
Yes, thank you, Elaine, and good morning to everyone. Petra, thank you so much for your insights. Your passion definitely shines through, and it's quite inspiring. You mentioned a book that we could read earlier on. Would you mind just sharing the name of the book again, and maybe some additional resources? Because as we all know, the subject can be quite intimidating. So I think the more we lean on your expertise, and obviously equip ourselves with additional reading, I think it's going to become a lot more comfortable. But thank you again for this insightful session.
Oh, thank you so much. Only a pleasure. But I think that's I think that you just had a good idea. If you can give those AI superpowers that book, because it's a really easy book to read from a layman perspective, if I put it this way, and give it to your executives.
Start there, start at the top.
Just put on the same thing like you would do with the multipliers, to give it to your management team, to your staff, because obviously you want your managers to manage like that. Give that to your top management.
Thank you. Yes, I do highly recommend the Multipliers book. It was one of my favorites, and I've referred back to it a number of times, and not just to keep my own management style in check, but to encourage others. Right.
Just put a few notes on the chat, by the way. Yeah.
Ah, wonderful. Okay, so all the information is in the chat. Super duper. All right. Okay, do we have any more questions or contributions from anybody in the audience?
And also, if I can just maybe add last thing is just that, sometimes the budgets don't need to be dramatic. So just allow for, as I mentioned, you will be surprised what you can do with 10,000 Rand. I know it's still 10,000 Rand is a lot of money, but equally, if one can have it as part of the reward system and somehow implement it into your other programs, the kind of the rewards programs and etc. initiatives, incentives, you can actually do a lot and allow actually just your teams to come up with those solutions. Say to them, this is what you can, go and get IoT devices. Go and get a 3D printer. I mean, just to give you an example, those printers behind me, they're starting from 6,000 Rand. It's not going to break banks to anyone, but they will be able, from a marketing perspective, already start seeing the opportunity, or from a warehouse, start seeing, oh my goodness, I can actually make this end user product. Let them play. Like the example of that hole in the wall, that famous education example where they put that computer in India, and the kids actually learn themselves how to program and how to just operate a computer. How to operate the computer and etc. Similar examples. Just allow for technology to be available in your company, and task your teams to set challenges, to say, what do you think you can create? And you will be surprised how these youngsters will work day and night and on the weekends to try to learn how to 3D model on watching YouTube videos. You don't even need to pay them for a course. Or you will be surprised how they will actually put a couple of IoT sensors together to IoT a little process plant there. So I just think that allow them to explore and experiment, to have that space where they can, and like small hackathons that really don't necessarily need to, that don't mean that you need to have your IT department running it. No, let your teams to come up with those ideas. Just give them those tools, and they're really not that expensive.
No, clearly not. I think that's absolutely incredible. Petra, I wanted to ask you, so say, for example, in my organization, if I'm quite determined to start somewhere, would you consult to my organization, for example, and help us come up with ideas around where 3D printing would benefit our organization? So it's a sort of a consultative, innovative, creative session.
100%. I would love to do that. And it's just the most fun to have. Please, can I have some fun?
All right, fantastic. I think it'd be worthwhile, Petra, if you put in the chat box some of your contact details, just so that people can reach out to you. I think that would be really great, an email address or contact numbers or something to that effect.
Perfect. I'll just put my phone number and my email address for anyone who would like to reach out.
All right, fantastic, wonderful. Okay, so I'm going to give everybody about 8 minutes back then. Petra, it has been incredible, as always. I love every one of our engagements. I really appreciate it. And the video recording of the session will be available on YouTube, so you are welcome to revisit. And if you haven't managed to get Petra's information, or you did lose it, then please do reach out to us and we'll be more than happy to share it with you. And apart from that, wishing everybody a great week further.
Thank you so much, Elaine. I really enjoy that. And I must say that you're one of the few people who actually has the vision to do, to bundle and to see how that 4IR needs to come into the skills and how can it achieve successfully. So really hat off to you to be able to see that and say, yes, we can do a lot of those from a skills development programs point of view. So it's really was amazing and my pleasure to actually be here. And thank you for being open and seeing it. Not too many people can do that.
100%. Thank you so much, Petra. Have a fantastic week. I'll catch up with you again soon.
Keep well, everyone. Bye.
Take care.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Elaine. Thanks, Petra.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
Bye.